Well, good morning. My name is Randy Selman. I'm the CEO of Xcyte Digital. I guess we'll jump right into it. Disclaimers. Okay, a little bit about me. I've run several public companies, all of which on the NASDAQ. Until now, my new company is actually on the Toronto Venture Exchange, but hoping very soon to be on the NASDAQ again. I started my career at Nortel in Canada as an engineer. Handled many different engineering jobs as well as engineering management positions, but I realized that I wasn't really going to get rich in the engineering world. I worked for IT&T, MicroCap, and Siemens, and then I said, okay, it's time to make a career change. And I became a salesman for Western Union. Some of you may remember that company. And within a year, I sold the largest sale in the 136-year history of Western Union, and I actually put them in the credit card authorization business. And their network today serves many different companies, although it's no longer under the name Western Union. While I was there, I invented a software product that ran on the newly introduced IBM PC that allowed for communications in the background so that the PC could interface with, let's call it X.25 networks, which is kind of like an email network today. And so it could send and receive messages while you were doing your spreadsheets or your word processing. That technology was interfaced to cash registers by a technologist that I knew, and then eventually we formed a company called SK Technologies, Storekeeper, which is essentially a point-of-sale systems company. SK reached a market cap of $80 million on the NASDAQ within a year of forming, and we did very well with SK. I left SK about 8 years into it to form another company. I'd met the head of the entertainment division of NFL Films, who was filming, other than football games, he was filming rock concerts and television commercials, and had an idea to create a company that would produce content for a medium that none of us even heard of at that point, which we called it interactive television, but it actually became the internet. So we formed a company called Visual Data Corporation, which eventually became OnStream Media, but Visual Data was taken public in '97, and we reached a market cap of $250 million by 2001. I've done over 14 synergistic acquisitions with OnStream, and then the pandemic hit in 2020, excuse me. And what happened is every company in the event technology space kind of witnessed this kind of phenomena. Within the first 6 months of the pandemic, we had the best revenues we'd ever seen in all the years we've been in business. And then about 7th or 8th month in, it all fell apart. And eventually, all the companies that were in the business were struggling. And my partner, Alan, who had been with me for all of the time at Visual Data and OnStream, I said to him, maybe we should look at a roll-up strategy of all these companies because they have good customers, they have good products, they just have no more upside. They're not going to be able to raise money in the size that they are. And if we started rolling those companies up, we would probably have a really good opportunity to build very, very quick revenue and very, very quick EBITDA. But we needed a vehicle to do that. So I decided, since we didn't really qualify and had no revenue or much to say, maybe $1 million altogether, at that point, I said, maybe we'll put it on a different exchange instead of the NASDAQ since we don't qualify for it. So we decided to try the Toronto Venture Exchange. So we did that. In the worst market possible, I actually raised almost $4.5 million in November 23. And if anybody remembers that time frame, I think we were one of the only IPOs in November. So it was interesting, but I needed the vehicle to do the acquisitions. When I talked to these companies as a private company, they all said, come back, when you're in a different position. So we did the IPO, and we actually acquired certain assets from OnStream Media called Infinite Conferencing, and then we and of course also a virtual event platform. And then in April of 2024, we bought A+ Conferencing. In July, we bought Webinar.net. And I'll explain these assets in a few minutes. And then in January of 25, we bought Streamline Communications. So in 18 months, we went from $1 million revenue at the listing to 10+ million today. And within the next I'm going to say 2 months, we're going to double that again. So it's going to really have dynamic growth here. So what is Xcyte Digital? It's a leading provider of physical, hybrid, virtual, and immersive event technologies. And we basically leverage AI and spatial computing to deliver cutting-edge experiences. And we're talking about every type of event. So a physical event like this one, to a hybrid event, which has an online and a physical event, to a virtual event, where you're attending it virtually, and then, of course, an immersive event, which is where you actually take the form of an avatar, and you can walk around just like you would any other conference, meeting people, having discussions. But behind it all, there's a tremendous amount of AI technology, which I believe is going to influence the industry immensely over the next 3 to 5 years. So the market opportunity for the event industry is expected to reach $2 trillion by 2030. And the virtual events business is expected to reach $1 trillion by that time. So there's a massive market here. And everybody knows it. You've been to conferences, you've seen online events, you know that it's part of your life today, but it's going to become even a bigger part. A couple of things to notice. The businesses that have been acquired recently have had some pretty good multiples. 7x times revenue for Cvent, and just recently notified, actually had a 10x multiple of EBITDA, which is kind of what's guiding Xcyte, that we believe that we can achieve that kind of a level of value very, very quickly. So, as I mentioned, we took advantage of what had happened during the pandemic to start combining these companies, and it's our goal to do 2 things. Number one, assimilate the client base, cross-market those clients that we get from the acquisitions with the products and services from the companies we've already acquired, and keep building on the client base that will be eventually using our more robust products, which are part of what we call the experience platform, which is virtual and immersive event technologies, that we also have a whole ecosystem, which I'll explain in a minute or two. So the great part about this business, very high gross margin, very minimal capital investment in technology. We spend less than $25,000 a month on R&D. And one of the things that we're developing transforms competitors into partners, and that's a really key point. So I eventually can say we don't have any competitors in the market, but nobody can really say that, but that's kind of where we're headed. Very, very high recurring revenue. So as I mentioned, the experience ecosystem consists of a number of partners around the world. And so when I mentioned that Xcyte is in the business of providing events, and we provide all types of events, what we have is the use of event technologies from many, many companies so that we can produce an event very specific to the requirements. So we can choose from a number of platforms, and we can put on an event that makes exactly the type of structure that the client wants. So he doesn't have to search for a platform. I mean, there's just a lot of companies out there that produce this kind of stuff, and they're not coherent. They don't have this one-stop shop situation. So in addition to all these partners being part of it, we then offer them all under a single subscription. So if you join Xcyte and say, I want to take a subscription out with your company, you have the use of all these platforms. And so that's disruptive in the entire industry. Nobody does that. Okay, so as I mentioned, our primary purpose is our acquisitions, which will then roll up into organic growth as we sell and uplift our client base. But the acquisitions that we're looking at, concentrate on production of revenue and EBITDA. So we can take a company, let me give you an example. You can take a company in the conferencing services business that's, say, doing $5 million, and the owner is barely taking a few $100,000 out. The costs to run the business are that high. I can take that $5 million business and effectively, with just the cost of the goods, which let's call it 20%, say $1 million, I can take the other $4 million right down to the bottom line, simply integrating the client base onto my platforms. I have the best webinar platform right now offered, and I have the best conferencing services platform offered by the 2 acquisitions I made. Now, understand that this has been my business for 30 years. I mean, I started it, I have the patents in some of the areas of this business. So I know the companies that are worthwhile to acquire, and I've been picking and choosing the right businesses. And I'm going to continue to pick companies that we can just either put right on top of our platforms, or those type of companies that we can use to expand our platforms. So for instance, more technology, AI information that, or AI technology that can be implemented to create better information from the events. And of course, also to make the events more successful. Okay, just simply having great technology and offering it to a customer doesn't mean the customer is going to do well at an event. Okay, hence there's not 50 or 100 people sitting in this room right now. So in order to create more interest or more attendance in the events, we also have technologies to improve the marketing functions using AI technology to bring more people to the event. We look for companies that their client bases can be upsold, cross-marketed, and especially that they have needs that we believe will grow with the company, so that they'll be looking at using some of our advanced technologies. And also, like I said, they have technology that enhances the overall product offering that we offer. So as I mentioned, our first acquisition, which was OnStream Media's assets, was our Infinite Conferencing and our Encompass Pro virtual event platforms. That was done at the IPO, the initial listing. And as I mentioned, the revenue was around $1 million. And then in April, we acquired A+, which basically just bolted on to the Infinite Conferencing platform. And so we just added $1 million of revenue and $900,000 of net income pretty quickly. And then our third acquisition was Webinar.net. And the reason I bought this company is we practically invented the webcast back in the mid-90s. My partner Alan and I are pretty well known for having introduced it. Mark Cuban claims it, but he didn't. So anyway, so the fact is, when we saw this platform, we had never seen anything like it. It was absolutely fabulous. And we get accolades all the time from customers, just, not even, requested, just sent in and say, hey, this was phenomenal. We just love the way this works. So we're very proud of the Webinar.net platform. And it's undergoing a significant improvement of AI technology being integrated. So it basically builds itself. You don't have to build a webcast anymore. You tell your AI to do it for you. And it's amazing the metrics, analytics that come out of it now that wasn't capable before. Our fourth acquisition, Streamlined Communications. Streamlined is in the conferencing business, but its services very, very heavy on investor relations. Streamlined does more AGMs than anyone else in the business. So coming up in May, June, and part of July, I think we're well over 3,000 AGMs that we're going to be performing, along with our standard, quarterly disclosure calls. So effectively, we're swamped for the next 3 months. I've never seen, the company typically was running at about $400,000 or $500,000 a month of revenue. We're well into the $1 million plus level, like $1.2 million, $1.3 million a month. So very impressive. So, and on the board right now, already several of these, most of them are under LOI, several of them are pending APA. At this moment, we're actually just being held in place because we can't do additional transactions, which I'll get to in a minute. But they represent, just the first group represents about 10 to 13 million of additional revenue, 4 to 5 million in additional EBITDA. They offer managed services, event technology, lead generation, vertical market expansion. So I mentioned we're in the IR space, but we're also in healthcare, we're also in medicine, and we're going to be adding some additional vertical markets to that. Not that we don't do webcasts and conferences and everything in every single vertical, but there's a specialty once you get to a certain level of actual events that you do in that space. And then you start to work your products and services around providing more and better services to that vertical market. And of course, all our acquisitions are accretive. So we're looking at pretty fast growth. As I mentioned, we're already at the 10 million plus for 24, 25, that's in the bag already just with the acquisitions we already have. We'll do most of that revenue. So we're actually going to be higher than that just with the new acquisitions that are coming in. When you look at the 2025, our year ends September 30th. So don't look at it as what are we going to do in the actual audited financial statement at the end of September, but look at it at the run rate for that last quarter as to all the companies that are now contributing, and it'll be well above that number. And then for 26, we've got 26.2, but that's not including the second list of acquisitions. So we're going to see very, very extensive growth. And I plan to take Xcyte to the NASDAQ at the end of 25, beginning of 26. So hoping to do it in 25. Cap table is as good as it can be. There is let's call it about 100 million shares outstanding. All of the shares, with the exception of a very, very small float, I'm going to say maybe less than 5 million shares, are under or within our control or are part of friends and family that are alongside us and have agreed to stay the course. So it's got a very, very small number of shares outstanding. So basically, kind of recap. So we're looking at potentially getting into a pretty substantial revenue numbers by 2026, qualifying for the NASDAQ along the path, possibly the New York Stock Exchange. Just depends on whether these guys decide what the actual regulations are going to be to get on their exchanges or not, because they keep changing them. And they're competing with each other now, the NYSE and the NASDAQ. So I think, number one, I didn't mention, but I've got a really great management team and great board of directors, people from the industry that know the industry, technologists and people that are marketeers in the event industry. And my staff has been with me on average 20 years. So we've got a pretty good handle on this business. And one of the key things to think about is that there's a lot of companies that roll up companies, and they get out of hand. At some point, they start rolling up companies that have nothing to do with the business they started, and they start finding themselves not having the solutions to the problems that are then, that occurred during the path. We're only acquiring the businesses we know, the business that we're comfortable in, that we've been involved with for many, many years. And it's kind of humorous that there's so many. I didn't realize how many little competitors we had. And so by assimilating them, I think we can build one big business, give everyone and our shareholders a very good upside. And I think, we have a pretty exciting future, and that's an Xcyte with an X, not an E. Anyway, any questions? You got it 100%, great. I like when that happens. All right, well, thank you, I appreciate it.